ESPN Chiney Ogwumike has words for the Indiana Fever front office, man. Now, we know there was a big storyline to come out last week that is regarding Caitlin Clark missing the game for his back injury. Now, Stephanie White went on record, not once, not two, but 3 different times, kind of letting us know, hey, this is how it's going to be moving forward. Caitlin Clark is going to be listed as probable going into the duration of the season. Now, with that being said,
Chiney Ogwumike just did what a lot of people have been thinking, but nobody on that broadcast had the courage to say out loud. Stephanie White went after Caitlin Clark live on air, and Chiney shut it down immediately, directly, and in front of everybody watching. This was not a subtle disagreement. This was not a polite back and forth between two professionals. This was one of the most respected voices in basketball broadcasting, drawing a hard line in real time and making it absolutely clear that certain narratives about Caitlin Clark are not going to go unchallenged anymore. The moment happened fast, but the shockwaves are still moving through this entire fan base right now. And what makes this hit even harder is the fact that it happened during a live broadcast with cameras rolling and microphones hot. There was no editing room. There was no chance to walk anything back. What the audience saw was completely unfiltered and completely real. When someone with Chiney's platform and credibility steps in and publicly pushes back on commentary that feels like it is targeting the most talked about player in the WNBA, the question everybody should be asking is, what exactly did Stephanie White say that provoked that kind of response? And more importantly, why does it feel like certain voices in and around this league keep finding new angles to diminish what Caitlin Clark is doing every single time she steps on that floor? How many times can you dress up criticism as analysis before people start recognizing the pattern? And why is it that the moment someone with real standing in this sport decides to call that out publicly, the entire basketball world stops what it is doing and pays attention? These are the questions fans are sitting with right now, and they are not going away anytime soon. Here is why this moment has fans completely stunned and why the reaction online has been absolutely volcanic. Because this goes way deeper than one awkward broadcast moment. Fans have been watching, taking notes, and keeping track of every comment, every criticism, and every take that seems designed to undercut rather than analyze. This is a fan base that has invested everything into following this player and this sport, and they are completely exhausted by the narrative games that keep getting played at Caitlin Clark's expense. And when someone finally clapped back on live television with the cameras still rolling and the whole country watching, the comment sections did not just light up, they erupted. We went through every single reaction, and what we found will not surprise you, but it will absolutely fire you up. Drop your thoughts below in the comments. And this is exactly where the conversation gets really uncomfortable for the Indiana Fever organization. Because what you are about to see in this clip is somebody who has been paying very close attention to how this franchise communicates with its fan base about Caitlin Clark's health, and they are not holding anything back. The pattern of injury updates surrounding Clark has become one of the most talked about storylines in the entire league, and it has been building for a long time now. Stephanie White has gone on record multiple times addressing how Clark's status will be handled going forward, and every single time those microphones come out, the answers seem to raise more questions than they actually settle. What makes this even more layered is the fact that this is not happening in a vacuum. This is happening against the backdrop of a fan base that already went through the emotional roller coaster of watching their players' health get mismanaged in real time last season. And that history is sitting in the room every single time Stephanie White steps up to that podium and opens her mouth. The fan base remembers exactly how last season played out, and that memory is making every new update feel like a trigger all over again, because when you have already watched this organization string fans along week after week with vague updates and shifting timelines, your tolerance for anything less than complete transparency drops to absolute zero.
ESPN Chiney Ogwumike has words for the Indiana Fever front office, man. Now, we know there was a big storyline to come out last week that is regarding Caitlin Clark missing the game for his back injury. Now, Stephanie White went on record, not once, not two, but 3 different times, kind of letting us know, hey, this is how it's going to be moving forward. Caitlin Clark is going to be listed as probable going into the duration of the season. Now, with that being said, there were several press conferences where Stephanie White had to explain herself simply because these microphones and Twitter fans, we needed answers. So as much as Chiney tried to say she don't get why they had to give an explanation for an injury report, oh, we definitely get why. Because you want to know what happened all last year? Oh, Kaylin's going to come back this week. Oh, maybe next week. And then this is the most famous line of it all, guys. They said Caitlin Clark is day-to-day.
Now, the question running through every viewer's mind watching this unfold has to be this. Why does a team with the most marketable and most watched player in women's basketball have such a deeply complicated relationship with transparency? Why does it take multiple press conferences and mounting public pressure before this organization gives the fan base the clarity it deserves? And why does it feel like the moment Caitlin Clark's availability becomes uncertain, the communication from this franchise becomes more confusing rather than more straightforward? Fans are not asking for medical records. They are not asking for private information that crosses any kind of professional line. They are simply asking for honesty, delivered with consistency. And that should not be a difficult standard for a professional sports organization to meet. Yet here we are having this exact same conversation all over again with no real resolution in sight. The answer is actually not that complicated when you look at the full picture, honestly. When a franchise mishandles injury communication once, fans notice and they file it away. When it becomes a recurring theme that stretches across an entire season, fans stop trusting anything the organization says publicly, and that distrust does not disappear overnight. The infamous day-to-day situation from last year did not just frustrate people in the moment and then fade into the background. It permanently damaged the credibility of how this front office manages information about its franchise player and left a wound that clearly never fully healed. So when Stephanie White now steps to the microphone and tries to establish a new normal around Clark's injury reporting, she is not starting from neutral ground. She is starting from a significant deficit that this organization created entirely through its own decisions. And closing that trust gap is going to require a lot more than press conference talking points and carefully worded statements. The fan base has heard the words before. What they are waiting to see now are the actions that actually back those words up. And this voice right here is saying exactly what the majority of this fan base has been thinking, but nobody inside that organization wants to acknowledge. The core argument being made is one that cuts straight to the heart of everything wrong with how the Fever have been handling their communication with fans. When an organization withholds information about its biggest star until the absolute last possible moment before a game, that is not professionalism. That is disrespectful. And when the financial consequences of that disrespect start showing up in real numbers, suddenly the conversation shifts from a fan complaint into a business problem that nobody in that front office can afford to ignore anymore. The fan base did not just express frustration with words. They expressed it in the language that every organization understands better than any other, and that is money walking out the door.
Fans information. When you got a front office that didn't announce she was going to not play until an hour and a half before the game, yeah, I think it's about time to give the fans some transparency with these injuries on this damn injury report. Because guess what? The fans spoke. And you want to know what happened when the fans speak? It hurt their pockets. Hit them where it hurt. I think we all could agree on that. So for Chiney and any other damn commentator that want to say the Fever looking goofy because they had to explain to fans why Caitlin Clark missed these games is beyond me. Because last time I checked, ain't no other damn player in the WNBA got the motion in the ocean like Caitlin. You could say Paige do. You could say AZ Fudd or Olivia Mounds is on her way to stardom or Asia Wilson. None of these players have the motion in the ocean that Caitlin Clark got. We all could agree on that. The numbers don't lie. You don't see 1,000 videos coming out on YouTube about Asia, Paige, Olivia Mounds generating the numbers of views.
But here is the question that every single person watching this has to be wrestling with right now. Why would any organization with a player generating the kind of attention and revenue that Caitlin Clark generates treat its fan base like they do not deserve basic information? Why is transparency apparently such a difficult concept for this front office when the entire economic engine of this franchise runs on the passion and loyalty of the people buying those tickets? And why does it take public backlash and financial consequences before an organization that should already know better decides to start treating its supporters like they actually matter? The answer is uncomfortable, but it is completely obvious when you look at the bigger picture. There is no other player in this league right now who moves the needle the way Caitlin Clark does. The viewership numbers prove it. The content engagement proves it. The sold-out arenas prove it. When you have a player whose impact on a sport is that undeniable and that historically rare, the obligation to communicate openly and honestly about her availability is not optional. It is the bare minimum that a fan base of this size and this passion deserves. And when that minimum is not met, people stop being patient and start being loud. What you are about to hear in this clip is exactly that loudness, and every single word of it is earned. And now this situation takes a completely different turn because it stops being just a fan frustration story and starts becoming a league-level accountability story. What you are about to see references a report that dropped and immediately sent shockwaves through the basketball community. Because what started as a single missed game for Caitlin Clark quietly snowballed into one of the messiest and most talked about off-court controversies of the entire season. The Indiana Fever found themselves at the center of a storm that they arguably created themselves by not following the proper procedures around injury reporting. And while the league may have let them walk away without significant formal consequences, the court of public opinion has been an entirely different story. The moment this story broke into mainstream basketball conversations, it refused to go away, and every passing day that the Fever failed to address it directly only made the noise louder and the scrutiny heavier.
Came out today, this morning. Now, there is a clip to go with this, but it's being reported that too much side explanation. Two-time WNBA All-Star responds to Fever handling of Caitlin Clark injury. Now, only a few could have predicted that Caitlin Clark will be sitting out a single game, which snowballed into one of the league's messiest off-court stories this season. It all traces back to the Portland Fire game, who they are playing again today. Portland Fire in LA. So if you guys don't, well, I said in LA, in Portland, Oregon. My apologies. And this boils back to May 20th. Now, when the Fever failed to comply with the league injury reporting policy while managing Caitlin Clark absent, technically, they escaped without any serious punishment.
Now, the question sitting in every viewer's mind right now has to be this. How does a professional sports organization operating under a clear set of league rules manage to fumble something as straightforward as an injury report? And if the consequences from the league itself were minimal, why does it feel like the reputational damage has been anything but minimal? Does escaping formal punishment actually mean escaping accountability? And perhaps most importantly, what does it say about this organization's relationship with transparency when a procedural violation involving the most watched player in the sport becomes the defining controversy of their early season? The answer to all of those questions points in one very clear direction. Formal punishment and real-world consequences are two completely separate things, and the Fever are finding that out the hard way, right now. You can avoid a fine. You can avoid a suspension. But you cannot avoid the narrative once it takes on a life of its own and starts spreading across every platform, every broadcast, and every comment section in basketball. The scrutiny that came attached to this situation has proven to be far more damaging than any league penalty could have been because it keeps feeding the larger story that fans have been telling about this organization for over a year now. And that larger story is one about a front office that consistently prioritizes its own comfort over the trust of the people who support this team every single night. And that is exactly why this moment between Chiney Ogwumike and Stephanie White is so much bigger than just one heated exchange on a live broadcast. It is the pressure valve finally releasing after months of frustration, distrust, and unanswered questions building up inside an entire fan base. Caitlin Clark is not just a player anymore. She is the reason millions of people are paying attention to this league and this team, and she deserves an organization and a media environment that treats her that way. When the accountability finally arrives, it does not whisper. It arrives exactly like this. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications.